Hello, it's Molly Mahoney here, and I am so excited to welcome you to the fifth episode of the Prepared Performer podcast. Hey, Prepared Performers, it's Molly from the Prepared Performer and Molly Tynes from Broadway. Yay! So this is my friend Molly, and she is amazing. And she was with the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang National Tour is where we met, right? Did we meet before that?
I think so.
Okay.
We may have known each other peripherally before that, but
yeah, that's funny. Okay, but she's amazing and working like a rock star and always someone that I go to from out here now that I'm not really performing very much anymore. I still have my equity card now, and I'm like very out of the loop. So Molly is someone that I know I can be like, wait a minute, I heard something's happening. Tell me what's going on. So I asked her to come and speak as part of this series about what it's like to be somebody who has an equity card, that's like super yay equity and works and puts it to the test. So, hi.
Hi.
So tell us how you got your equity card in the first place.
I got my equity card about 10 years ago. I actually really didn't know too much about equity when I got it. It was sort of a whim. I decided to come to New York and see if I could make it in musical theater. I really honestly didn't know what to expect. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. The Goodspeed Opera House was auditioning for a national tour of Pippin. They had already cast one of the Manson Trio girls. And in this production, they actually wanted them to play twins. So they needed someone to fill a non-equity slot who could play twins with this other girl. So it had to be a certain height, body type, facial structure. And I was that person. But because they were doing a national tour afterwards, it was an equity tour. So I did the summer non-equity, made my, measly $300 a week or whatever it was, and lived in like a house with 20 people and 2 bathrooms.
And how many people in a bedroom?
What's that?
Did you have
well,
your own bedroom?
at least we had our own bedroom, but it was like, there were like 6 people sharing a bathroom on each floor. So it was kind of rough. But then I got my equity card and went out on the tour, and the rest is history. I've been equity ever since.
And had you done a lot of non-equity or any really non-equity work before that?
I really had not. I had just graduated from college and had right out of college gone and done a cruise ship, which is obviously non-equity work. And that's it. That's the only experience that I had. So I didn't have any musical theater experience professionally before I got my equity card.
Which is awesome. And just so people know, cruise ships are non-jurisdiction, right?
Yes. So you can work on a cruise ship if you're an equity member or a non-equity member. It's out of the jurisdiction of equity. So it's a whole separate thing. It's international waters.
Oh, all kinds of things go there, right?
Okay. Definitely like sort of unregulated in certain ways, like your living conditions and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened from that? So you did the national tour, which was awesome, of Pippin. How big was that? Like how many cities? What did you guys do on that tour?
We did, the whole experience I think was about a year, in the Goodspeed and the tour, maybe just a little less than a year. And the main part of the tour, it's so crazy that I got this job because I really was so underqualified for it, but it was supposed to be a pre-Broadway tryout for a new production of Pippin. Stephen Schwartz was involved. A lot of Broadway professionals were involved. Like, Charlemagne was played by Mickey Dolenz of Monkees fame, and the Strata was played by Shannon Lewis, who's been in a million Broadway shows and is still somebody that I look up to so much. So it was kind of crazy. There was just like me, I didn't know any better. But we spent 6 weeks in Toronto, which was the major kind of out-of-town tryout. And then we spent a week or 2 in several other cities.
Awesome. Okay, so then what was it like coming back from going into not only your first equity job where you're working as a performer, but also your first equity job where you had like a long span where it wasn't just, a weekend or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I definitely learned a lot. I was very green when I went into that, and, it was a humbling experience in a lot of ways. I learned that I had a lot to learn.
Like what? What are some of the things that you...
Well, understudying. I had to learn how to understudy.
Have you done shows in school?
I'm sorry?
Have you done shows in school?
I had, but I did them all recreationally. Like my degree is not in musical theater. Yeah. So I had done, productions of cabaret and how to succeed in business without really trying. I had always loved musicals. I just didn't really have training in the business aspect. You know, I had training in singing and dancing and acting, but I didn't have training in the business,
right,
auditioning or any of that. So that was really the big thing I discovered when I came back, that I had to learn how to get another job, because I wasn't just going to be lucky every single time. There's still such a huge element of luck involved every time you get a job, of course. But, you know, I had to learn how to prepare a book. I had to learn how to get 16 bar cuts, and I had to learn about the whole, you know, sitting in line at 6 o'clock in the morning for EPAs and all of that. I had to learn how to act a song, you know, or to act a 16 bar cut, you know, to pick the perfect 16 bar cut that tells a story and has a journey and allows you to make choices, all that good stuff. And yeah, I probably spent a lot of time and a lot of money after that tour learning all of those important skills.
So when you were on tour, were you in a place where you were like, okay, I have my card, this is like what I'm gonna work now? Or were you still kind of like, whoa, this is fun? You know?
I think I just realized that this was what I wanted to do. I just had never really even thought that I might be good enough to do it professionally. And I didn't realize, I just didn't know anything, you know?
Yeah.
So I definitely like realized while I was on that tour, I was like, this is what I want. I want to be an equity actor. I realized that there were a lot of protections that we had that I was not accustomed to before. Funny story, when we started at Goodspeed, after our first preview, I took all of my like tights and underwear and everything, and I put them in my bag, like my own personal bag. And the dresser was like, what are you doing? I said, well, I have to like wash my things. And they were like, we do that for you. You don't have to wash your own tights. You don't have to wash your own costume pieces here. And I was like, oh my God.
But that's something you totally wouldn't know though, right?
Well, because on the cruise ship, we had to wash all of our own stuff, you know? So it's like little things. That's a silly little thing, but there are a lot of other protections. Like, you know, I think I made 3 times on the tour what I had made as a non-equity member. And that was considered a low-grade tour as well. It was an experimental touring contract. So that was considered by the other equity members in my company to be a low-paying job. And it was like triple what I had made at Goodspeed.
Right.
So, you know, that's a huge part of it. Protecting your days off, not having crazy travel days, like all of these things were just not even, I didn't even realize that somebody could care about that and be like, no, you can't keep them in rehearsal now. They have to take a break or whatever it is. So,
right. And to me, I feel like the difference there is that when you're not equity, it can be something that you're doing recreationally, because you don't need to, you can have another job and then that's there, and you know, you can, or maybe go back and forth. But when you're ready to actually be in a place where you want it to be your full-time career, those are things that are there for you. So when you came back, what was it like? What did your first, do you remember what your first audition was after getting back, or what that experience was like? I
honestly don't. I have no idea. I know that I took some time off because I got an injury on the tour, a hamstring injury, but I can't really remember how I don't remember.
Okay, so what was your next job that you got after that? Or was it a long period of time? Like you took some time off to get your hamstring, but
yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I think I did little things here and there. The next big thing that comes to mind was that I, again, was kind of like lucky and got cast in a new Broadway show called Angels, which you've never heard of it because it never made it to Broadway. But, you know, that was in, let's see, the Pippin tour was 2006-07, and I got cast in Angels in the summer of 2008. So that was right before the big mortgage crisis happened. And a lot of hopeful Broadway shows did not fare too well that fall. But I also, just because you never know what's going to happen in this business, I had continued to audition while I was preparing for Angels. And that was when I booked the Chitty tour that I did with you. So that was sort of like my back burner job. Like if something happens with Angels or if it doesn't transfer or something, then I had the Chitty tour. And of course it ended up that Angels did not transfer, and Chitty was a wonderful job that lasted for a year, and I made lifelong friends and, you know, got a lot of really important experience doing that. So it worked out for the best.
But that's a really good point too about auditioning, even though you have a job lined up. Like what you said about not about having to come back after the tour and being like, wait a minute, I have to audition for something else, like that. The fact that jobs, all jobs end in this business. Yeah, there's no job security really.
Yeah. And with Angels, we had a contract for an out-of-town tryout, and we had first right of refusal, which means that when it transfers to Broadway, they have to either offer you a role or they have to pay you a fee if they decide to cast somebody else. But we didn't have a contract for Broadway. So, you know, there was no guarantee that it was going to happen. And that was why everyone was continuing to audition, because, like,
you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's really common, I think, for a show not to transfer. But back then, it wasn't as big of a thing. Like, if you were announced to go to Broadway, then you were going to Broadway.
Right.
Then the thing happened, and, you know, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay, so what after Chitty, or like what I know Chitty was a, you know, tiered tour as well. Was it similar to?
It was similar. The Pippin tour was sort of like a weird experimental contract that doesn't really exist anymore, that I guess probably became the tiered tours.
Can you talk about, I know that's changed even since Chitty, so can you just explain a little bit about what that means, like that not every contract is going to be the same and that there are different things that change?
I mean, obviously the ideal contract is a full production contract, which is the Broadway contract. In addition to having the highest minimum wages of any of the contracts, it also has the best quality of life allowances. You have the highest per diem, and just, you know, other considerations like quality of the hotels.
And per diem, for people who don't know, per diem is something that you're paid in addition to your salary to cover for living expenses,
right.
For hotels. So you end up paying for your hotel while you're on the road, but it's technically comes out of what they call a per diem, which is a separate payment that you get.
Well, on that contract it does. Now the CETA contract, you don't pay for the hotel, you just have a smaller per diem.
Oh, I understand. See?
Yeah, one of the many things that can change, and, you know, that's actually a good, like, segue to talk about how some contracts are better than others. On a full production contract, you're required to be given 2 choices of a hotel. So there's some incentive for the producers to find hotels that are affordable and that have certain amenities, because if people are given a choice, they're going to choose the better one, like the one that's closer to the theater or whatever it is. On a CETA contract, the producer pays for the hotel, and you're given a smaller per diem that's meant to cover, like, food, basically. But
when we were on tour, if you didn't want to stay in the hotel that the company had, you didn't have to. You could get vacation rental, but, you know, you could get like a Airbnb or something on the road and save that money. But now you can't do that with the CETA contract, is what you're saying.
Well, that's still an option, but they call it a buyout. The money that you get if you don't stay there, the buyout is much smaller. Okay. So it's much more affordable. It's more unless you can find a really good deal and you're willing to live with other people in, like, a vacation rental, it's generally speaking more affordable for you to just take the producer housing and get the normal per diem. But unfortunately, you know, sometimes that means that you're in a hotel that's really far away, or a hotel that's not so great. And, you know, there's only the one choice, and they're the ones paying for it. So if they can negotiate a good deal with that hotel, then that's where you're going to stay. You know?
Cool. So, so depending on, there's like all these different levels, different types of tours. You can find them all on the Equity website as well, which I'll post in the links below, where you can go in. I think you don't have to be a member to see all that stuff.
I think you can see the contracts regardless. I think that's in the document library, but I'm not entirely.
If you want to know more about that and you can't find it, just email me and I'll tell you what it is. Yeah. Okay. So then what happened after Pippin?
Let's see. I did a bunch of different regional things. I worked at a lot of regional theaters, Goodspeed, Paper Mill, Tuts. I've even done, like, guest artist out at a theater in Oklahoma, where most of the performers are non-union, like college kids. And then they have some professional non-union actors who live in the area. And
so that's a different kind of contract also, where a guest artist contract, like if you're non-equity and you want to become equity, you can join the equity membership candidacy program, but you will not get, and you'll get points towards being a member of equity, but you do not get those points with the guest artist contract, correct?
Yeah. Well, if you're a guest artist, you're already equity.
No. I mean, if you're an EMC and there's artist there, you're not going to get the points.
I'm not sure about that. So you probably know more about that than I do, because
I don't know.
I
started that process, but at least that's how it was before, that you only get the points if it's a full contract.
Yeah, I mean, I never really did the EMC thing because of my crazy circumstances. So I was EMC for like a few months, before the Pippin tour went out. But yeah, so that was really great. I got to work a lot of different kinds of contracts. And then I guess the next thing would be being cast in another Broadway show that didn't happen, which was a revival of Funny Girl that was supposed to star Lauren Ambrose and Bobby Cannavale, which they announced, let's see, that was, I think, 2010 or something. They announced like maybe 5 weeks before rehearsal started that the show wasn't going to happen.
Yes.
I was also involved in another Broadway hopeful show at that time called Chick 6, which also did not transfer that season. So it was a rough year for me. 2010 was not a happy time. Or I guess maybe that was 2011 actually. See, it was so devastating that it's like gone from my memory. Yeah, that should have opened in the spring of 2012, I believe. But it all ended up being fine. I got cast finally in a Broadway show that did happen, which was the 2013 revival of Pippin. And I was with that show from the very beginning, from the workshop, the out-of-town tryout, the Broadway run, and I even went out on the first national tour of that for a little while earlier this year.
And so about Molly also when she says like, oh, it was just an accident, I was like the right height and whatever. She also is crazy and not only has a ridiculously amazing voice and is like a stupid fierce dancer, but I think I'm right in saying she was the only person who was like both tracks in Pippin on Broadway. If you know anything about it, they had a full circus company and like a musical theater ness, and Molly did both because she's crazy. So she also has like mega tricks up her sleeve in addition to being totally ridiculous at everything else, which helps her to be able to work so consistently because you're crazy and to be able to pull all those tricks out all the time,
Everyone's got to do everything now. There's no dancer track anymore. It's like everyone has to sing, dance, act, and do backflips,
Right, and hang upside down from a hula hoop.
And cover 3 principals,
Right, yeah, insane.
Everything. You have to do everything.
Right, crazy. So what was different equity-wise on Broadway compared to tours and stuff?
Well, the salary, for starters.
Especially when you're covering lots of people and hanging upside down, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was really nice getting that Broadway salary. I mean, because I had done 2 national tours, but they had both been lower tiers. So even though I thought that they were, good money, and for where I was in my career especially, like that was really, really good money on the shitty tour for me. I think maybe some other people on the tour didn't agree, but for where I was in my career at that time, that was great. But yeah, Broadway's like twice that. So that was good. And also just being able to work at home, being able to have a normal life, not live out of a suitcase, like see my then boyfriend, now fiance, when I came home at night, you can actually have a career at home.
Yeah.
That was huge for me.
Yeah. So then because you decided to leave Pippin, right? Yeah. So then how has that been for you? Like with other things you've had come up and stuff, and now, how has that been for you since then?
It's been good. I mean, I was with Pippin from beginning to end for about 2 years. That was before I even went out on the tour. And the one thing I will say about, our jobs, our lifestyles, which anyone who's a professional actor knows, is that you have 1 day off a week and that's it. So even though the actual hours that we spend doing the show may not be that long compared to like a lawyer, we don't have a weekend, and you get 1 week of vacation every 6 months and that's it. So I was kind of like ready to have a minute to like maybe go to brunch on Sunday, like maybe go visit my family, maybe go see my relatives that I hadn't seen for like 2 years. So that was nice. And then I did another, what's with me and the Broadway transfers that don't transfer? The reason that I left Pippin was to do a Broadway-bound production of Can Can, to do the pre-Broadway, and it's still in the mix. Yeah. We were hoping to transfer for spring of this year, which didn't happen. There were too many similar shows happening this season. Lots of period piece French dance happening. So it's still in the works. Maybe you'll see it this fall. Maybe you'll see it next spring. But it didn't transfer.
Yeah.
And then Pippin closed. So there was no job to go back to there either. So I just started auditioning again. I'm doing another regional show this summer out in the Berkshires. Bells are ringing, which I'm really excited about. Yeah.
And there's something else happening too.
Oh yeah, I'm getting married
In
in October.
Right. So that's like a whole huge thing too. When you're a performer, so much of it is about just like crazy getting the next job, getting the next job, getting the next job, because there's nothing you can count on, like shows close. And so at some point you've got to make sure that you can also set aside time if you want to do something like get married.
Oh, it's very true.
Prioritize that.
I mean, this has been like the first time in my life as an unemployed actor that I've had to turn down auditions. I think I'm driving my agents crazy because, you know, I promised my family and my fiance and myself, I mean, I don't want to postpone my wedding,
Right.
that I wouldn't audition for anything that would conflict with those plans. So, you know, all of the fall stuff starting to audition now. And, you know, it's just auditions. This is not to say that I'm turning down job offers. Like these people they're not missing me when I'm not in the room. They don't know I was supposed to be there, but I, you know, so it's kind of crazy. I'm like thinking about insurance weeks for my health care and thinking about making money and all of that, you know.
Yeah.
But my wedding, it's important.
It is important, and that's so important too, to prioritize those glass balls and rubber balls, and if you drop your wedding, it might break. So I think it probably
it just means that come the end of the year, I'm gonna have to be pounding the pavement looking for a job.
Right. And I'm sure right now you're also like keeping those relationships alive and stuff like that, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Involved in stuff. There was, when did you get your agent? Because
I got my agent right before the Chitty tour. It was actually a friend of mine that I knew socially, Ben Sands, and he, you know, my agency was, they periodically, like an agency will audition new people. So if they're looking for like new talent of a certain kind, they'll go to showcases for colleges, or they'll just invite people into audition. And I went in to audition, and they signed me.
During an invited call that they had?
Yes.
That's cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Which I don't think that I would have been asked to come in if I didn't already know Ben. I was getting to the point where I wanted to have an agent. So I had been preparing my, like, now you probably do it all digitally, but at that time you sent in like a nice envelope with a cover letter and like your resume and your headshot and said, I'm seeking representation. But that one just happened to be that I already knew him personally.
Which is, I think, still so much the case, that really you've got to stay involved and be nice to everybody, because you never know.
But on the flip side of that too, I mean, I found it appealing to work with somebody who knew me as a person. He actually is no longer with my agency. He's moved on to another agency, but the people at my agency, my current agents, are fantastic. And I consider them friends. I think that, you know, I trust them to go to bat for me and to be honest with me if I'm not doing well, you know, if I do poorly in an audition, if there's something that I need to fix. I think it's really important.
Good point, though, that not only would they want to work with an actor that they know, but you as an actor, you should want to work with somebody who's going to treat you like a real person and not just like a number on their roster.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's huge value to that, especially if you're somebody kind of starting off in the business. There's something to be said for going to like one of the huge agencies, but there's also something to be said for going to a smaller place where maybe you know someone where they might like go to bat for you more, you know?
Yeah, I like it. Awesome. Okay, this has been really, really great and amazing, wonderful, and great to hear your stories and stuff. Can you just like close us out with some thoughts about like I know that for the most part you are a yay equity, you know, so like I've done some pros and cons and stuff like that, and so just kind of go through your pros and cons, or as to why, like.
Well, I think like the big one is if you want to be a professional actor in New York City, like if that's what your goal is, there's no reason under the sun that you should not become a union actor. Just there's absolutely no reason. If you want to work on Broadway, you have to be equity. So that's the big one. But then even beside that, it's easier to audition if you're equity. You don't have to wait in line for hours and hours and hours and then be told at the end of the day that they don't have time to see you. Like they will see you. Once you do get the job, you actually make a livable wage instead of making you know, a lot less money and having to have another job on the side, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want to be a full-time professional actor who pays their bills by being an actor, you need to be an equity actor. I do have some friends who live outside of New York City and who do other things and who are very talented. You know, there's some big theater scenes in some other places in the United States, and they make strong arguments for their personal case of why they choose not to be equity. But most of them also have another job or like a family or something. You know, there's some reason that it's advantageous to them to not really commit to the union. If you want to be like a full-time actor, you really need to. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be an equity actor.
Yeah. What do you think about, I agree with you, first of all, but what do you think about people who, because sometimes I get a lot of questions from people who are nervous about taking that like TYA tour, which is theater for young audiences tour that's going to give them their card, but they're like, I don't really have credits. I don't really, you know, when they're in a place like that. And I know your situation was special, obviously, A, because you were in the right place at the right time, but B, because you're stupid awesome. But I mean, you have more tricks up your sleeves than most people do.
I didn't then, though. I didn't have those tricks then, you know. I had singing, dancing, and acting. That was what I had back then.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, but I think you like, and there's a lot of people who are really great singers and not as strong dancers, and really strong dancers and not as strong singers. Sure. And I think you're one of those people who does things equally strong. So for people who might not be in that total triple threat place where they can have a full wide array of shows they can audition for, what would your advice be about people who are worried about booking or getting things on their resume?
Unfortunately, whether or not you have your equity card is not going to be the determining factor in whether or not you're able to find work. You know, I mean, that argument I hear all the time, oh, well, I'm really not a strong dancer, so I just want to get some more credits on. Okay, get credits. But if you're auditioning for Broadway, they don't care if you did a non-equity dinner theater and played all of the principals for 2 years. They really don't care. They don't care at all. They care whether or not you can do this job. So, you know, I mean, there's unfortunately no right way to do things in our business. You can be unbelievably talented. You can go to every single audition. You can know all of the right people, and you might never work on Broadway. I have plenty of friends that are an excellent example of that. And then on the flip side, you can graduate from college, show up to New York and be 19 years old with no equity card and no professional experience and book your Broadway debut. So yeah. I would say you're going to be taking a chance regardless on whether or not you're going to work. Like there's no guarantee you're going to work in the equity or the non-equity sector. So if you're given an opportunity to get your equity card, you should take it, because at least then you have access to equity jobs, you know?
Yeah.
You're still going to have to play the crazy game of Russian roulette of trying to get a job in this business.
And you're still going to have to, if you're worried about, sometimes I think if you're worried about building the credits, if that's the reason that you're waiting, then you should be focusing on building the tools, like the techniques and the tool, and maybe don't build the credits, but get your card and then use that time when you're not booking jobs to learn what it takes to get it, you know, to put a book together, to take classes and books, that kind of stuff, as opposed to
how to audition. Stay in New York. There are so many casting directors in New York that teach classes. Yeah. I mean, this is controversial. Some people call it pay to play, but why not? Go ahead, pay and play. Sit in that room with the Telsey casting director and find out what they think you're good at and what they think you need to work on. That to me is a lot more valuable than going and playing Peggy Sawyer at a dinner theater that no one's heard of, that the Broadway casting director also hasn't heard of and doesn't care about.
Right.
You know?
I like it. Totally awesome. Yay. And that it, like you said, you know, everybody has different goals. So it depends on, like a lot of people out in California, there's such few, you know, the equity jobs are so few and far between. And like, I do a lot at the Chance Theater, which is this amazing theater company out here that I love, and they're working on becoming equity, but right now they're not. So I produce my own shows so I can do little things here and there, but that's not my goal right now. I don't even have a book together right now. Like my goal is to have babies and get them to a place where they can put their own.
I feel the need to qualify everything that I just said before, that I'm specifically talking about people who are trying to become a professional actor in New York and like go on to Broadway.
No, and you said that. You did. You totally said that. And that's, so I'm like just requalifying that as well. But that's exactly the position that I was in, and that I, you know, for me, it wasn't even about necessarily like getting a Broadway show. I just wanted to work. And I think if you want to work and pay your bills with that, that it is way easier to do that in an equity job than it is to do.
Also, like, you know, New York is a grind. Not everybody wants to, I mean, being an unemployed actor is expensive and time consuming. You know, it really is. It's expensive and time consuming to prepare auditions and take voice lessons and do all of this and do all of that.
And it's a full-time job that you're not getting paid for.
Yeah. Not everyone wants to do that. I totally respect that.
Yeah.
You know? I
like it. But at the Prepared Performer, we're like giving you the information for all different sides, like whatever, you know, the different sides of life. No, my whole thing about what I'm at my stage though, I still pay my equity dues.
Wait, I was like, you're losing you for a second here.
It said that I had bad internet connection. Are you there? Hello?
Oh, there you are. Okay. I had you on my screen like this for a really long time.
I wonder what it'll actually record. That'll be funny. Okay, so my point was that even though I'm not performing right now, I'm still paying my equity dues and I'm still keeping my card, because I know if I ever, like for me, it's not worth it to me to be doing the non-equity shows that are more, you know, the time consuming and that kind of stuff. I'd rather hold out and only do the shows that I know are going to be in that type of show, you know?
Sure, of course.
But everybody's situation is different. So it's just good to hear from all sides. I like it. All right, we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys so much. And Molly, if they want to like learn more about you or find more about you, where can they go?
Well, I'm a bad person. I don't have a website. You're all supposed to have a website these days. I'm like kind of granny with some of that stuff, but I am on Twitter, even though I never tweet. I'm Mary Tynes, Tyn. My Twitter handle is not my name. I know it's like all terrible. But that would be a good way to get in touch with me.
Okay, I'll put a link to that below. And if Molly ever, if I ever help Molly to put a website together, I will post.
I know, I really need to get on it. I need to like get my, you know what, together, but.
No, you clearly have stuff together. And after your wedding, maybe we'll talk about that. Okay. I helped Daryl, our friend Daryl, do a website for her wedding as a wedding gift. So maybe I'll help you with your website as a wedding gift, but your own personal website, not a wedding website.
Oh my God, amazing. I love it.
Okay. But yeah, so I can add links to things too, if you have a link to too. Yay! Okay. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Molly is awesome. I'm going to stop our recording. Bye, Prepared Performers. Yay. Okay. Stop.